Well, hello, hello, hello. It is Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. And that means it is time for the state of leadership, simple and beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. We're going to be talking about Robert and his brilliance today. And I, we're talking about your brilliance every week, though, right? And I am Whitnie Wiley, his sidekick. And we're going to be talking about new leaders today and things that you can do to improve as a leader. And if you are a veteran leader, there are probably some things that you can be reminded of. So, whether you're new, veteran, I was looking for all sorts of synonyms and antonyms when I was doing the write up today, looking for words to use as part of the write up. So I didn't find what I had something in mind. I don't think the word exists, so I may have to create it. That's another story for another time. We are talking about Robert's article. It is So You're a New Leader. Now what?
Mhm.
So, before we launch into the article itself, Robert, why did you write this piece?
I wrote it because as someone who worked inside an organization as an internal coach, I would get called. A lot of times, I would get called when people got quote unquote in trouble. And one of the things that I noticed that was a lot of the folks that initially I was called to help were new leaders, people that had worked in the organization for many years, were really good at their jobs. And because they did their jobs so well, they were promoted into a management role. And many of these people, what would happen was they would be, they worked really hard to be promoted. And once they got promoted, they were kind of like, I've arrived. They'd expended so much energy getting to that point that I don't want to say they didn't want to do anything else, but they kind of relaxed a little bit.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people were not, I don't want to say formally trained as leaders, but they'd had no leadership training to that point. And what they relied on a lot was position power. And their position power only took them so far. So what would happen was we would discuss different ways that they could learn more about leadership, they can get more skill and be more effective.
Okay. Awesome. And, that is my experience and observation as well. Companies will promote people, and then because they were good at their former job, whether they helped them to become good at that job or not, expert in that position or not, for whatever reason, once you get moved up, no one was thinking, oh, we need to make sure that you have the same sort of support and resources that you had originally to become good at your job so that you can become good at this one. And we all know that when we are doing a technical job, and I'm not talking about technology, but the task and the responsibilities of any particular job, right? The technical, tactical aspects of that job, not the same thing as leading people. It's a totally different skill set, and some people have it more naturally than others, but whether it comes to you naturally or not, we can all get better at it. So let's dig into your article and talk about ways that new leaders and veteran leaders who want to be even better at their jobs and leading people, what they can do.
Right. So one of the things that I like to do whenever I write an article or even talk about things, when I talk about resources, I like to start at no or low cost options first, because a lot of times some things, like going back to school, that may be cost prohibitive to a person. Maybe they're not ready to take a training course or things like that. So I would always start with things that cost no money. And only thing that the first suggestion will cost you is maybe your ego or your pride. So ask for help. You're a newly minted leader. Look at your new peers which of your new peers could help you, which are seen by the organization as being really successful. Talk to them. Maybe they'll be willing to help you. That costs you nothing. All you have to do is say, hey, I'm having some issues here, and I'd like to meet with you to discuss how maybe you can help me. Very, very simple. I say simple, but sometimes it isn't. When people are, you get a job and you have that sense of pride, you want to prove that you can do it yourself. So certainly try, but if you can't, don't hesitate to ask your peers for help.
You know what? That's such a good point. I think if you approach it from a place of you don't have to do anything by yourself, right? You don't have to prove you've already proven what you needed to prove by getting the promotion, right? You've already proven it. So approach it from a different perspective. This is just an invitation or a challenge to do so, to approach it from a different perspective, which is I don't have to prove anything, but I want to understand what it is I'm doing and do the best job. One of the things that happens, this is a little off topic, but it's related, is when we are recruiting and hiring and replacing people, right? We're looking to replace the person that leaves with the person that just left.
Right.
Right? Rather than recognizing that the person that comes into the position, even if you promote someone from within, still has to do some ramping up in order to really step into the shoes of the person that left. And if we would stop, thinking either on the side of hiring people or the person who has been hired, that we have to hit the ground running. I don't know why we put that in job announcement, but that's another story for another time. That we don't have to do that. And if we would give ourselves some permission to make sure that we understand the role that we've been assigned, and then step into it with an understanding that you've got something that you want to bring, and figure out how to bring that, your first step, which is to tap into other people for help, I think is a really good one. And I like the fact that you start with a no or low cost option. Maybe the most it costs you is a cup of coffee, right?
Could cost you a cup of coffee, maybe a lunch. It's pretty easy to do. The second thing that I suggest is try to build your own internal kind of coalition of managers. These could be new and seasoned managers. You can do it in your organization or unofficially outside of your organization. Just have a network of colleagues that you can talk to that can help you. We do that as coaches all the time. We call those mastermind groups. But you just certainly don't have to be a coach to be able to do that. So that's my second kind of, and this gives you the advantage of, we always say this, the collective IQ is greater than the singular IQ. So you have a bunch of people who can look at your issue, your challenge from a lot of different angles and offer you advice or suggestions that you probably never have thought of. And it's going to be good for those seasoned leaders too, because you have the people coming in with a new perspective. If it's in your organization, or even if it isn't, they have a different perspective on leadership and management that they could share. And you can't go wrong when you have different perspectives.
Very true. Very true. I like that.
Yeah. And from that point, one of the other things, like I said, low or no cost, ask someone to mentor you. There are seasoned executives in your organization that you can ask to mentor you. Perhaps it could be formally. Maybe you can meet on a regular basis, but perhaps that person is very busy. Many executives are very busy. Maybe they can only meet with you every so often. That can work too. But ask for their help. Bring the challenges and your goals to them. They have that. Been here before, seen this before, been here, done that kind of attitude that can help you, especially when it comes to the culture of the organization. A lot of times I've worked with people that I say stepped on cultural landmines. They were told, do what you want, just get the results. And I always, love when people say that, because it's almost like they're like, winking, going, do what you want, get the results. But certainly when you're part of a culture, as are those people that are saying, do what you want, get the results, they're part of the culture. So they don't really know the culture because
Right.
they experience it every day. It's just part of how they do business. They're not thinking about things that are taboo because they naturally avoid them, because they do those things every single day. But when you're a new leader in a new role in an organization, you haven't experienced those things. And so you may step on a cultural landmine. So having a mentor can really help you when it comes to that, especially that, and with managing your new group.
So I'm curious, are you an advocate of internal mentors, external mentors, multiple mentors? Where do you land on any or all of that?
That's a really good question. I'm kind of two minds when it comes to that. When it comes to what we're talking about today, I am a big fan of internal mentors. But in general, I think having any mentor, someone who is more experienced than you, is always a good thing. But in this particular case, I'm talking about someone in your organization. You're a new leader in this organization. Maybe a lot of eyes are on you. It really makes sense to have someone who can advocate for you and
Mm,
who can help guide you to help you succeed and to avoid certain issues that could cause problems. And I don't want to say, damage your reputation, but we know that a lot of times when those things happen in certain organizations, if you have a misstep, those tend to stay with you for a long time.
okay. No, I like that. I like the answer going both ways. I'm a believer in multiple mentors because you can have people that are mentoring you in different aspects. But certainly, I think when it comes to being a new manager, new leader in an organization, someone who understands the culture, the politics of that organization, maybe has had that position in the past and can help you, particularly with landmines, becomes really important. So
Yeah.
I like
And I'll give you an example, it usually works well when you have multiple mentors, but I have an example of one that really didn't work well, and it involves me. So when I was in grad school, because you had an advisor too that was helping you write your capstone project. And I was writing my capstone project and I was doing whatever my advisor was asking me to do. And a colleague and a friend of both of ours was doing his with a mentor from another or a college, another university. And he offered for me to bring your paper to this person too. And it was at some point what this person's mentor was telling me to do with the paper was the complete opposite of what my formal mentor was telling. So I was like, okay, I know what this person's telling me. I'm going to listen to my formal mentor because they're the ones that I have to give this paper to, and they have to adjudicate it, and they have to make sure that it is good
right.
enough to move on. So, most of the times it does work. Most of the time it does work very well to have multiple mentors, but you may run into a situation where you have conflicting information. So be aware of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's a good point in that. In the end, it's your career, right? And so whether you are working with one person, multiple people, if you get conflicting information, it is not that maybe one is better than the other or one is right or wrong, but keep it in the context. And I would agree with you that someone who knows the system, that knows the culture that you're in, I would probably listen to them first over the other, at least in that context, and then could take the information, the other information for what it was worth at another time. So good point.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's the next?
it's something near and dear to my heart, as you know. Books, buy some books. There are, if you do a search on Amazon for leadership or management books, I don't know how many tens of thousands of hits. There's so many titles out there. Some are better than others. So what I like to do is I'm not a big fan of the self-published, but I have lots of books that are self-published and they are tremendous. But when it comes to that, because look, anybody can publish anything, right? And if you're going the self-published route, look at that person, do your research, make sure they're credible. There are a lot of credible authors out there that are self-published and are tremendous. When it comes to this, if you're in any kind of serious trouble, start with the people that come from the Harvard Business Review or Sloan Management Review, something like that. You want to use those things. Those things are tried and true. Wiley,
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Another great.
If
only, right? We wouldn't be doing these things every Thursday.
If only. I have to see how we're related.
Absolutely. They have tremendous books. Certainly, it always astonished me that many of the people that I worked with that found themselves in some kind of trouble, I would ask them, what have you done? And they would say, not, haven't talked to anybody, haven't, asked about being mentored by someone, haven't asked a colleague for help, haven't cracked a book. And, it's just makes good sense to do a little research. You're in a new role, know that it's different than your old role, do some research and just try to find, look, you can even, and I'm going to say this with a grain of salt, do a Google search, right? Again, people can put anything out there. So try to go to the reputable, websites, the Harvard Business Reviews, the Sloan, management, things like that. You can do those things. And so I think that's really important. Low to no cost.
I'm a big believer in reading, continuous education. I actually do a lot of reading, both with traditional books because I like the feel of paper in my hand, but I use Audible as well. Actually used free because I won't go into why, but I get Audible for free. And, having books available to you, other people's perspectives, their research, right? Their observations and experiences, I think, are invaluable. And so successful people, they read at least like a book a month, right? And they're like constantly reading and updating their knowledge base. And so you want to be successful. Leaders read. Readers are leaders. Leaders are readers. Both ways. Mm-hmm. Readers are leaders. Leaders are readers. So read more, and it will certainly help you.
Absolutely.
And you can always go to the library. You don't have to buy anything.
Absolutely. Like we're talking low to no cost. I like to buy the books because if you looked at my book,
I know you
they are highlighted and stuff is written in there, and I'm like, this one works great, this one doesn't work for me. I have all kinds of
what I love about you though is that we have, for those of you who are maybe watching this for the first time, or some other episode and we hadn't explained this, Robert and I go back 8 years, 7 years, 8 years, almost 8 years.
Yeah.
And we went to graduate school together. And Robert is, hopefully you won't be offended by this. Robert's a bit of a nerd. And he's a real, if you need someone to remember what you read in a book, I am not the world's best reader. I read, I get what I need to get, move on. Robert remembers every detail. So every Sunday we get together and we have conversations. We're working on some programs, working on this, and I'll be talking and Robert say, hold on. And he'll go pull a book out of his library and pull up the exact reference. So Robert's your guy in that respect. And so, no, well, you can't have him, already have him. Robert's my guy in that respect. He has the, he's just got his finger on the pulse of where things come from. And I really appreciate that about you.
Thanks. It's a blessing and a curse, because some of my friends are always like, they'll say something and I'll be like, wait a minute. I'm like, oh, let me guess. You read a book about that, or
I did read a book.
Yeah, I did read a book about that. It's just one of the things that I've learned to do over the years. It's always, and you and I have, we don't want to go down another rabbit hole, but you and I have talked about, one of the reasons why I've done that throughout my career. I've always tried to make myself a touchstone for credible information, so.
And that's important. That's important. And that people can know that they can depend on you. If you've said something, you've researched it, you've given it some thought. This is not just some, thing off the top of your head. So
yeah. And a lot of that comes from remembering the younger version of myself that would blurt things out and that were completely wrong.
It didn't work so well.
It didn't work so well. It's like, yeah, you better know what you're talking about, buddy.
Cool. What's up next?
Well, next, when we talked about, books, and the next thing is, take a course. And there are many courses out there, many organizations that have leadership certificate courses and things like that. So, do your research. You can, some of them are offered by colleges, universities that have, adult continuing education programs. Look at those. There are many of them. And in your area, you can do some of them online. I like the hybrid approach where you do some of it online and then you get together with your cohort and you talk about cases and you do that very much like when we were in school. I thought that was really, really helpful. So that's my second thing. A lot of those, like I said, you can come out with a certificate. Some of them are by Ivy League schools. So it's very impressive to have a Stanford or Harvard or Yale or Cornell certificate hanging in your office. It gives you a bit more credibility and you're going to learn stuff. I'm a big proponent when it comes to, I remember when I was coming up, people would say, oh, you go to school to get that paper. That was all that really mattered. And I don't really believe that. There are some people that really believe that it's just about the paper. I feel that the paper it's the key.
Yeah.
But the knowledge lets you walk through the door. So when you're learning those courses, when you're in those courses and you're learning, really try to absorb the information, see how it applies to your organization, because maybe what they're talking about, a technique or theory, it may not fit your organization perfectly. Ask questions. That's why I like those interactive types of courses where you can really interact in real time with the instructor. So you can ask questions and you can get some advice on how those things can work in your organization. And I'll talk about the last thing later, because and why the program that we went through I thought was very valuable for me.
Okay. Nothing you've said I disagree with. So, but there's no real surprise there.
Well, there's not going to be any controversy today, right? not today. I'm hoping that I'm making logical sense today, right?
It does, and you do.
Yeah. And I think the last one is go back to school, and and that's why I start with the low to no cost options first and work. We worked our way up to go back to school. That's going to give you that piece of paper, but it's also going to give you the knowledge, hopefully. And one of the things that I really liked about the program that we went to, and when I was working internally in this organization, one of the things that was really attractive about the program that we went to was they said, we don't give you tests, right? That we give you projects to do in your organization. And I thought that was great because there are a lot of universities that give tests, and tests are fantastic if you're looking to just recall the information, right? But once that information is recalled, a lot of times it evaporates, right? You've recalled it from the test, it's gone. unless, of course, you made a mistake, and then that question will, and that question and answer will stay with you probably forever.
Oh my God. It's funny you say that. I still have a recurring nightmare. It happens, it rarely, but every now and then I have this nightmare of a test that I took in law school, and the answer, it wakes me up.
You'll
And I
never forget it.
it's like, here's the answer. It's like, I know the answer. It's like, it doesn't matter. You
Yeah.
passed the bar like 20 some years ago. Let it go.
It's really funny.
go.
And I had a coworker that was, because after I graduated, and I was encouraging my go back to school, because we had tuition reimbursement. Go, take advantage of it. Go back to school. And a coworker was talking to me about a test. She went to a university that gave tests, and she got one of the questions. She wanted to get 100, and she ended up missing this question. I guess she got a 98 or something like that. And she was complaining about it, and she was complaining to me about it. And I said, well, guess what? I said, you'll never forget the answer to that question. I said, tell me all the questions you got right on the test. And she was like, now tell me the one you got wrong and the answer to it. And she was, it's this. And I said, absolutely. So tests are great to a certain extent, but I like being able to apply what you're learning in real time. And so when I was going back to school, I had a long conversation with the director of my department, and I was like, I'm going back to school, and I want to make sure that I can do this, because I really, this program is really attractive to me. And one of the things that they say is that they encourage you to do projects inside your organization. Would I be allowed to do that in this organization? And this, my boss went to the CEO and got approval for me to do that. And so that was a tremendous experience for me. And I learned a whole lot doing things that way.
Aren't you just the ethical guy? I didn't ask for permission
Well,
to do projects. I just did. I wrote stuff. I did. You know what? If I had known that I should have asked, I would have asked.
Well, Whitnie, I was in an
Yeah.
organization that if I had done something that wasn't approved, I probably would have gotten fired. So they were very punitive, or I think nearly everybody that I worked with were fantastic people. But the organization, we talk about culture, right?
Yeah.
And knowing the culture of that organization was everything had to be approved by the CEO. It was the first organization that I worked in where everything that happened had to be approved by the CEO.
Okay.
It was so I learned that very early on, because when I got hired there in that organization, one of the first things that I asked my manager was, what is the culture of this organization? What should I be doing to fit in? And what are the things I should avoid doing so that I don't find myself in trouble? And he was like, everything has to be approved by the CEO. And so I was like, okay, I can be sneaky. And I know you weren't being sneaky. I'm just teasing you. I can do this on my own, but and probably would have been able to do it. But the angst that would have caused me
right.
would have just, driven me crazy. So,
I think if I had gotten tuition reimbursement, I would have seen them more as a partner in the process. It was kind of like, well. And when things came along, here's the other thing. I didn't necessarily do it within my organization proper. I used my expanded network that I got from being a part of that. So same thing, only different. Certainly got permission from the people that I tapped, especially when we did 360s and some other projects. And I needed to learn some things about myself. And, you're reaching out to people who you're trusting them to give you. And some people were really honest. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been my experience talking about 360s that when you ask people for advice or ask people for some, critique or commentary on how you're doing, it's been my experience that people are eager to share that. we all have one person that, in our who's a frenemy, who's our friend because we've been friends with them so long, and we ask them for, what advice would you give me? They give you something snarky. Exclude that person. You shouldn't be asking that person, and because they're probably giving you feedback about yourself when you're not asking.
Right.
So they're just dying to get in there and and to turn your screws and to give you some negative feedback. But most people they feel really honored that you're asking
Yeah.
them to give you feedback, and that was my experience as well. And I got some really good feedback. Not all of it was. It wasn't. I don't want to say that it was hard to take. Some of it was unexpected. I will say that. I was like, really?
No, looking inward can be challenging, right? And when people are giving you input, and so the only thing I think I would add to your list, which isn't really an add to your list, would be this piece here, right? And getting feedback. But this is what you can get from your network. This is what you can get when you're asking for help. This is what you can get from a mentor, a coach, a mastermind group, what have you. Making sure that you understand who you are, doing some self-work, some introspection, reflection, and making sure you understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, so that the list that you provided, you can get some targeted assistance by knowing where you need to make improvements in particular. And then also to strengthen your strong points. I am a big believer in, highlighting and honing in on those strengths, but there may be some weaknesses, in my air quotes, that need to be addressed as well. And getting feedback would be helpful for that. So it fits within what you're talking about, but just wanted to call that out specifically.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for emphasizing that. I think that coming up as a new manager, I think one of the best pieces of feedback I got was from my manager, who still is to this day my favorite manager, and she sat me down and she talked to me about said all the things that I did well, and she said, "You are not a good multitasker." She's, "I need you to work on multitasking, not for everything, but when I need you to multitask, I want to be able to count on you." And I am not, and I said, that's really good feedback, because I'm not a big believer in multitasking. I'm a believer in doing one job, giving it staying really focused on it, and then doing the best job that you can, and then move on to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at that as a challenge, as, okay, this is something that, this manager that I really respect needs me to do. Let me step up to the challenge and work on multitasking for her. And it's a skill that I can take, and it may not be my preferred way of working,
Right.
but I will have that skill. And when I need to do that, I'll be able to do it.
There you go.
Sometimes it can be, sometimes you'll hear things and you're surprised by them. And I have a friend that constantly gives me feedback. But fortunately, she's a friend that gives me credible feedback, and not looking to go, oh, Robert seems really confident this week. Let me see if I can get in there and knock him off his perch. But it's very, it's to your advantage to have people that will give you good, credible feedback.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you have any final words as we wrap up?
Yeah. Final words. I guess the main thing, look and see what's in your budget to do, and do it. And remember, even if it's not immediately in your budget, you're investing in yourself. And what you learn cannot be taken away from you. So
absolutely. And the only thing I would add to that is, check to see, talking about budget, your employer, right? A lot of times there's, in your management package, there is money there for professional development, making sure, and it's a user lose, right? So make sure you take advantage of it, whether it's a cafeteria plan or some other way that you have resources available and time. And so make sure you're negotiating that. That is being the best you can be as a leader is part of your job. And so make sure that it's acknowledged and respected as part of that is what I would add to that. So
Great.
awesome. Cool. So we want to thank you for joining us. The link for the article that Robert wrote, So You're a New Leader, Now What, is in the post. I have also put it in the comments wherever you're watching this, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. I believe it's also in the LinkedIn comments. At least technologically, I try to do that. So if it's not there, I'll have to double back and make sure, but I believe it's there. And if there's a topic you would like for us to cover in the future, please let us know. What we try to do is look for things that are happening in the news to keep you informed of what's happening, good, bad, ugly, in leadership. And we're also going to be exploring more things both Robert and I have written extensively. And so we're going to be looking to incorporate the things that we've both written in our conversations weekly. So you have an opportunity to read the things that we've written, hear what we're saying. We invite you to be a part of the conversations and invite you to share topics that you would like for us to cover in future episodes. So we want to thank you again for being here. If there's anything that we can do to be of service, either in a coaching or consulting capacity, reach out to one or both of us, and we would be happy to discuss how we can be of service and value to you and your company. So with that, we want to thank you for joining us. We are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. Again, this is the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond, talking about all things leadership. So until next time, take care.
Bye now.